So, how's it going, everybody? My name is Justin Madison, and we are here for reality mapping eh, number two. So, I don't know who saw the one from last time or watched and kind of figured out today's video what we were going to be talking about. So, last time we were doing a video series on kind of sorting out what reality is, because if we can understand where we live, we can understand how things work, then we're more than likely to be able to operate effectively where we are. We're able to actually have better effects, or maybe able to actually accomplish things in life. So with this one, last week we talked about truth being kind of a North Star. Now we're talking about how once we have our star, because think of this, when you're mapping out a new territory, like let's say you're Christopher Columbus exploring a new world, right? All you have to go off first with is the stars. You look up, that's that constellation, that's that constellation. Those are our points of references, kind of the universals, which is truth. And then from there, you end up going to your new location, and you have to get the edges of your terrain. You have to figure out what's the border of the sea, what is the major features like a mountain, a river, a depression, etc. And from there, you're going to end up putting in little details and whatnot. So last time we talked about truth. Now, hold on one sec, because I want to look over here, see if there's comments or anything. I don't know if I can see it from this other phone. But aside from that, this reality, right? We started with our mind, and how our mind is kind of this small little copy of the universe inside of our heads. We live in this skull prison almost. Now, the next is, let's forget about perception as reality and all that, and talk about the real world. Pretend it's real for a second. What is this place that we're in? Because that's going to set the limits of how we operate. Now, you could start from first principles in physics. You can start with just kind of what is up, what is down, what is gravity, what is light, what are particles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would very first start with, what is the size of this universe that we're in, right? The big universe, the galaxies, the Milky Ways, the stars. The very, very first thing you have to understand, in my opinion, you guys chime in if you want, is the universe is endless for all intensive purposes. There's estimates like on the size, like how many 10 to the power of a trillion light years this thing is. But in reality, it's so big, it's so huge, it, for all intensive purposes, goes on forever. You could live a million lifetimes, a billion lifetimes, you would still never see all of it. You would see a fraction. Now, here's a good one. What is it? There are more habitable planets in the universe than there are seconds since the Big Bang, or planets that are similar to Earth or something like that, right? It's huge. Okay. So, what does that mean about us and our place in it? Well, kind of our first position you could take is, wow, we're really insignificant. We're kind of like nothing. We aren't all that important. And in a lot of ways, you could say that, yes, we're just here. What's the meme? I love it. It's there's a big picture of the galaxy, universe, the planet, and then it says there's this giant place out here, and here you are on this one little planet worrying about paying taxes. Like, put it into perspective. When we do this big talk, we making everything so important. How important is everything? And also in the context of eternity, how is important any moment that you're in right now? How is any little thing? I mean, it's all kind of silly. It's all kind of nonsensical. Um, keep it in perspective. It's like a cosmic joke. So we are finite. I think I spelled that right. Probably not. And the unlimited. Okay, so here's another thing about the universe's size of it that's also very important to grasp when we're kind of like shaping our map and our identity, the borders. The universe is so big. Not only is it infinite and all this stuff, but most of it we could never even reach. And not only that, it's so big that, take this for example. Let's say there's a star out somewhere in the universe, right? And you are here on Earth looking at said star with your eyeballs. You see light coming from that star back into your eyeballs, but it took so long for that light to travel from said star back to you that many, many, many thousands, millions of light years have passed away. And that star that you once saw or that you're seeing now probably no longer even exists. It's probably burned out, supernova, turned into a black hole, something like that, because the distance that those photons or whatever had to come all the way just to hit your little eyeballs took so long that a whole cycle has passed. So, what that is telling us, another thing about our identities, who we are, is that we live, and you can extrapolate this down to a very micro level, in the past. Our minds live in the past. Everything we experience is something that's already happened. Okay. Um, Now you can take this to like, this is a super big distance in between here to here, but let's make it a little smaller. Let's say my hand in front of my face, right? The light coming down from my ceiling, hitting my hand, bouncing off my hand, refracting, coming into my eyeballs. Once in my eyeballs, in my retina, has to go through my optic nerve up to the back of my brain. I need to then be able to process that information, make something coherent out of it, and then finally register it in my relation to me. Okay. Now that probably took a fractions of a second, but nonetheless, it wasn't happening instantaneously, right? So we start getting into this idea of things are all relative to one another. Like time kind of becomes this abstraction where it's time can be faster in some places, slower in other places, right? This is Einstein stuff. Um, let's kind of sparse that out. But the very big thing is, what does it mean though that we in our minds exist in the past? We're almost like just observers. We're not necessarily active participants in a lot of things. Our control is so minimal. Our Not to even say that we necessarily even have control, but if we even did, it's this almost like sense where you are in a giant ocean. You're just being tossed around by waves, and there's no land, there's no island around anywhere. And you're really at the mercy of it all. It's almost like we were pushed into this existence where it's like, okay, you're not going to be able to do anything but paddle in your little area. Just watch everything that happens because that's about all you can do in your limited experience right now. Now, it's not to say later on we couldn't go on and travel space and go out and terraform Mars and all these other places, expand humanity, which would take for the rest of the universe, I mean, like billions of years to accomplish. But the point is, our relation to reality right now is we are largely spectators, and a lot of events that unfold are beyond our control, and we're just here along for the ride for most all of it. It is what it is. So, what does that mean? Well, what that means is you probably shouldn't take life so seriously when you're at this million-foot view. You're somebody who is not in control. You just kind of have to let things go. And this is the bigger thing that it kind of teaches you, is to not be afraid. Okay. A lot of religious texts, other things, I don't know what you're into, say over and over and over and over again, do not be afraid. Fear has really very little benefit in the long game for a lot of things. Now, if you're being attacked by a lion, if you're getting mugged or something like that, maybe a little fear would help you in a moment to be motivated to handle that situation. But our brains are a little mismatched in that we shouldn't always be focused on everything being a direct threat or whatever. It's more abstract in our minds. And just most things are going to be what they're going to be. So we got to be able to relax, just enjoy the ride. Now, from there, we talked about what was I was about to talk about? Something about information processing at distances, things like that. I can't quite remember. Let me check the chat real quick. If anyone has anything to say so far. Uh, oh my gosh, you people. What if there wasn't God or aliens? Down is towards the center of gravity on Earth, i.e., towards your feet. Dance, dance slow. Can you please say a prayer to Allah to combat Islamophobia in the fastest you say? Okay, so a lot of this is nonsense here. We'll start at the first. We have number one. What if there wasn't a God or aliens? How was we made? Well, um, how was we made? So there's a lot of different thoughts. If we're doing this big picture, I guess that would be a good place to go to. So you could take a evolutionary or atheist perspective, let's say, or you could take a religious perspective on how it is that we got here, right? And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities on those two things. They both start with almost an instant beginning. You look with scientists or whatnot, they say there's a big bang. If you look at the religious groups or whatever, it's always, and then God said, let there be light, or there was some divine creation that started all this. And it came from a moment of nothingness into somethingness. So if there's no God, if there's no aliens, as to the question of the gentleman in the chat, um, you could say that in order for nothingness to exist, there has to be something. Or by definition, nothingness can't exist without something, or then for it's like absolute nothingness. It's really an observation. It's more of an acknowledgement of nothingness that brings out something, if that makes any sense. It's a very slippery idea, and everyone has struggled with this idea of the beginning. How did we get here? Forever. This has been like one of the big questions of time, reality of humanity. Like, why are we here? What are we here doing? Now, a lot of it could be for the sake of existing, to exist, because in and of itself, the idea of nothingness is almost impossible. To exist is to be. And that also goes back into this forever thing. That's what I was going to get at. There's this idea that matter cannot be created and or destroyed. You take an object, say this marker, I set it on fire, I destroy it. What really happens to this marker? Does it disappear forever? Well, maybe in the definition or identity of a marker, it's destroyed within our minds or in its place in reality. But the individual atoms, the particles, are just simply being separated. Their bonds are being dissolved. The electrons that bind them together in their form are being released in the form of flame. And each individual part, you see smoke. That smoke is the material parts of the marker moving on, but they're floating up into, the higher parts of the atmosphere. They come lighter. In some cases, they turn into ashes. Those ashes dissolve into the ground, etc. The point is that the marker in and of itself is not truly gone. You have a memory of the marker, and also, as long as we are here and we carry on the memory of the marker, but also the material, physical properties of the marker still exist. They just get recycled into new things. Now, you could say that is, in essence, eternity, and that those little molecules that floated up into the atmosphere, they become part of the air, they get digested by plants, they go into the ocean, whatever, but they end up turning into another thing. That's just like maybe you and I. And, as far as science can tell, that is a law in science that matter cannot be created or destroyed. So we are forever. So maybe you could say that there never, ever even was a beginning. This is all just a giant universe that's getting recycled forever. But then it leads back to that question again, is like, well, when did this whole recycling process start? That's a big question. I do have a video on that. It's titled The Meaning and Purpose of Life. It could be very tricky for a lot of people to follow, but it's the best attempt I've given at how we actually came to a beginning. And it's a very kind of weird video. So I hope that answers some of your question. Let's see if we have anyone else that actually asked anything. Are you guys following along so far? Are you actually understanding what I'm saying? If you are, then thumbs up. If you're not, ask a question. What do we have going on over here? Okay, we got a couple people. All right. So let's make a footnote. So we are forever. And don't take things so seriously. How do you spell seriously? I'm drawing a blank. Seriously. That's not right at all. I'm not a very good speller on the spot. I used to spell check a lot. Part of my education. There's a U in there. Who cares? So don't take things so seriously. Part of this reality mapping, right? Now, also on top of that, about time, the boundaries of the universe, time and space are kind of the same thing in a lot of ways. If you think about what space is, right? You have a bunch of objects that are defined by their relation to other objects. Okay. So a marker is not a cow. A cow is not a skyscraper. Okay. That sounds kind of silly, but the point of that is to say that the material form or the position things are in are what define them by their subatomic particles, whatever, atoms. And what defines time is not only their difference in structure, but in the distances that they relate to each other and how they degrade or how entropy affects them over a period of them changing position. So, like, I am Justin. One of the things that marks time is me moving around, right? It's motion. And it's also the degrading of my body or my cells changing position and maybe not copying themselves as well in the DNA chain when I get replicated. And these changes mark time. So time is not a clock. It's not a watch. It's this thing that is just measuring distances. That's really all it is. It's all about distance. So the bigger something is, right, the more time you can have. And we have this thing that seems endless in scale, in space. What are all the endless configurations of all that material within space? It could be endless in theory. I mean, obviously, some type of limitation. Um, but moving on from that, here's a position that if you were to take an atheist position, right? Let's say you wanted to try and understand how you could live forever as a soul or as some type of spirit of something. Well, mathematically, let's say you were playing pool. You're playing pool on a pool table. Okay. You start out the game, you set all the balls in the rack in a triangle. You have the cue ball, and that's the beginning of the game. Okay. You then strike your cue ball and scatter the balls everywhere. Right. Now, if you were really good at math, let's say geometry, trigonometry, or whatever, you could calculate if you just showed up after the game had started and saw all the balls scattered, you could calculate where the balls were in their last position based off of their positions. You could calculate, like, well, this one is in this spot and all these other balls are in these spots based off of their positions and the angles that they're in. With some little bit of presupposition, you could figure out where they all came from. And from there, let's say the game continued to play out and you scatter the balls all over the place and they end up in certain holes. Well, at the end, what you could end up doing is the game is cleared and all the balls are in their holes. You could figure out with math how the whole game played out in order for them to end up in those holes with just, a couple of concepts of how basic physics work, like in that you're using a pool stick to hit the balls, right? So, in a way, when I look at this marker, I don't just look at a marker. I see words on it. I see certain colors and shapes. I think about all the things that would have had to happen for this marker to be created. Okay. This marker is a story. There's so many parts to it. It was in a factory. I can, you know, understand that. It has different parts like this felt tip, which probably came from a separate factory and was produced somewhere else. And those materials that came from that separate factory for the felt tip were probably from materials that came from some type of farm or mining operation. And then I can imagine all the people that had to be a part of mining that mine, and then how they had to go to work every day and all that. It goes on and on and on and on. Just like our pool table analogy, the whole universe, all of reality, is a giant story that if we were to understand cause and effects all the way back, we can almost see the whole past. It's as if it always existed. It's this giant game of pool. It's very interesting. So in a way, everything goes on not just in a physical aspect, cannot be created or destroyed, but from a narrative aspect. And we exist as a narrative mostly in our minds. So we really have our spirit or our soul. If I'm trying to take a very scientific approach or philosophic approach, not so much a religious one, you could say that our souls, in a way, are our story or our legacy, maybe. This is one interpretation. Okay, got it. Do I have any comments on this so far? Has anyone had any other thoughts? If anyone's following along, please give a thumbs up. I've only got 2 people I've held on to here. That's fine. Um, Moving on from there, this reality that we're in, we're mapping it out. We're in this endless story. It's kind of what it is, it really. Um, and we're here as almost witnesses to it. We're the spectators in a lot of way to a lot of the parts of it. But the cool thing about like a big story, there's a lot of characters in a story who each have their own story. We're all a bunch of little micro stories building up to a giant story, right? And you may not be able to have a lot of effect on the whole story, but you play your little part and you have your own little story where you have your own little effects in your own little universe. Okay. We talked about in the last video how our universe almost exists in our mind. That all being said, um, pay attention to your part, what you can do, what you're focused on, your reality. Because that's in the end all you can have awareness of the bigger picture. You can do all of this, pay attention to other things, but you were obviously, I'll get a little religious here in a second. You were put here in the spot you are in. And the things that are around you are the things for you to deal with, or the things for you to interact with. If there's another race or species of aliens on another planet 10 billion light years from us, right? That's really none of your business. If there's a poor alien hobo on that other planet and you feel like you're supposed to help everyone you can, you're not going to be able to help that hobo alien on the other planet. That's just not your job. You're not even capable of handling it. So things that are within your power are what you should put your attention on, right? What you can seek truth from, what you can be a part of. I mean, even in the time you're in the configuration of atoms that you're in right now, you can't do anything about the past, and the people in the past can't do too much about the future. They can try to have an effect that makes the future better, but you're in your time now, I'm in my time now, and that's all we can really handle. So keep focused on the day to day, which is another religious thing. Do not worry about what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Jesus said that a lot. A lot of other people, I'm sure Buddha said that. So focus on today. On do not worry about your daily bread or your bread tomorrow. Focus about today. Um, but yeah, other than that, is anyone disagreeing with me? I really want someone to disagree with me. I'd really like to hear some feedback on all this. Ba, 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 ba. But all right, big perspective. We're drawing our map, we're drawing our outline. We had our star from last time. And now we're drawing our little continent around it. Do, 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 do. I guess it should be under it, right? Because it's the stars above, it's shining down on it. Truth. Okay. Outside of that, I'm looking to see another guy show up. I'm going to mention him if, what was it? Actionable Freedom. We were talking earlier. I was busy. I couldn't talk. Are you here in the chat? Just keep, okay. Just keep following. It's a good run so far. Hey, thank you. Okay. Well, we could keep going. All right. So continuing mapping. Where are we? Our boundaries. All right. You have time. Okay. Not only are you in an endless time, you're here for, well, this body you're in a short time, which kind of just really is recommenting on that you can only focus on your day to day. All you have is today. That's all you're promised, right? So, with that being said, this short run that you're on, okay, your physical matter will go on forever. Your narrative, your story will go on forever. It's weaved into the fabric of reality. What story do you want to leave behind? Do you want to leave behind a story of a scared person, somebody who was always wallowing, afraid, someone who was always taking the safe bet, just existing? Or do you want to add to the large story an epic, at least as much as that you can create? Do you want to have an impact, something that's worth going back and everyone else watching? Because let's pretend, right? Just for a second, this is a thought I have sometimes. There's this idea that you have either entropy, where the entire universe scatters, everything drifts apart so far because light is refracting and pushing out to the outer edges, making everything thin and gray, and it dissipates into nothingness, right? There's also this idea that there could be black holes within, right, that suck everything back in. We have a collapsing universe that recalibrates and then starts the Big Bang back over again and pushes everything out. Well, that coming back together moment, I'm going to get a little woo woo here, could be as if we are all returning to source, the original point. And when we're in that original point, it's almost like we're all coming back together to rejoin a giant family. Okay. And when we're rejoined, it'll almost be becoming one again, would be like we would all experience everyone's stories again. So, what story would you want to bring back to that in your existence? What would you want to say? Some people, maybe even Christians, call this like a day of judgment or something like that. That's one potential. So, this is meant to be a little bit motivational. When you do your day to day, you have to realize that you're here for a good time, not for a long time in this lifetime. And you have to face whenever you have fears in a day to day, it could be anything. Um, you're afraid of starting that business, you're afraid of approaching that person that could be your spouse, you're afraid of rekindling a relationship with a family member, something like that, right? You don't want that to be a part of the story of the universe. You want it to be that epic, and you want to face those things. And you're not going to grow. Your impact, your weight or gravity of who you are will be smaller if you submit to fear. Right? You want more mass. You want more action. Think of this: novelty or a variety of actions would give you a broader definition of who you are in the universe, or the more things you do, the more things you learn, you become more unique and you gain more information. You gain a more complex story of who you are. Well, there's this idea. So, gravity, right? Man, I'm running out of marker here. In the fabric of space and time, gravity is the thing that pulls everything else into it. It's the thing that disrupts or it makes all of the other particles, photons, whatever, attracted to a object. If you want to have more of a positive, more effective outcome on reality, you need more gravity. How do you gain more gravity? Well, you have to have novelty in your story, in your narrative, who you are internally. When you gain that novelty, right, you will not just be a monotonous static noise, you will be a signal that goes out into everything. That signal that you are will draw other things in. It'll spread out. And the number one way to be static in life is to be monotonous. That's what static is. Static on a TV screen. That noise is just a bunch of repetitive things. It's a bunch of things that are just the same, the same, the same, the same, and you can't discern anything out of it. When you live day to day in fear, wake up, go to your 9 to 5 or whatever it is you do in a monotonous way. Don't try hard at work. Don't self improve when you're at work. Come home, watch TV, drink a beer, sit around on the couch the rest of the night, wash, rinse, repeat the whole thing, never take any big steps in life. Guess what? You're becoming static and you have no gravity. Your story has no weight to it and you don't propagate out. Your signal doesn't expand. Okay. So the big takeaway here is I've really tried to illustrate in this a couple ways is we cannot be a fear. No fear. Um that's like everything I've ever read, everything I've ever studied, they come at it from 1,000 different angles, but the same result is yet again do not be a creature of fear. Fear is the identity of wanting to remain the same. When you have fear in you, you're afraid that you will not go on. But in irony, that's the very thing that stops you from going on. Creatures, animals, lesser evolved things, they want to survive. In order to survive, they are protective. And not only are they protective of themselves, they try to maintain the same patterns they think that work in order to keep going along just long enough to reproduce and let the next generation give it a try. But that comes across as fear. Fear is just static noise. You're not going to be anything. You want to be courageous, novel, trying new things, making an impact. And if you fail, hey, at least you had a good story or a good ride. You went out there and tried. What is it Teddy Roosevelt said? Um, don't criticize the man in the arena. Even if he loses, at least he's down in the arena. I'm paraphrasing. Um, Other than that, though, that's a lot of what I have to say about what's going on here today. Um, okay, we have a comment. It's true that the one thing you certainly will regret is the thing you don't try. Ordinarily, people, of course, fear losing what they have, though. Correct, actionable freedom. Dead on. Okay, this is a good segue for me to talk to you, actionable freedom. Earlier, we were talking about how everything is pointless. This reality that we're in right now, this time in human history, in this country we're in, are really screwed. And I can't disagree with you. I can't say that there's a lot of negative things that could end up happening. You've got AI is really one of the big things that maybe most people just don't understand how it's going to work out, the automation of everything, like you brought up earlier. You could have a lot of jobs taken, truck driving jobs, they could all be gone. That's like 10 million jobs in America. That would be Great Depression levels loss of jobs. And, with every 10,000 people that got unemployed statistically, what is it? It's like 100 people themselves. You know what I'm saying? I have to keep it YouTube friendly. And or no, it's every 1% unemployment increase. 10,000 people do that. That's big. But that's one thing. If there was a catastrophe, nobody could really survive it. Like the Great Depression back then, everyone was kind of like farmers. They could subsist off land, they could grow their own gardens, all this stuff, and they wouldn't be able to. But look, I've just been talking this whole time how not to be afraid. And yes, all those things could happen. But here's the thing, in all of human history, there's always been a pending catastrophe, there's always been a pending problem, a thing that could wipe it out. You had the Black Plague, the Mongols invading all of the West. You had, I mean, even look at that. Everyone in South America pretty much did die from a plague. You could go on and on and on and on. There's always a challenge, but here's the thing. I'm going to keep it very, very brief. As evil arises, good will arise in tandem, and you will see unexpected good things happen that come out of left field that you didn't think humanity had in them. Because just like natural selection pressures, you need that burning fire underneath humanity to push us into a direction where we change. You almost have to overwhelm that fear. There's that dissolving of death instinct or situation where once you think there is no way to make it through and there's no other choice, you change. That's when you let go. It's like you're on one island where there's a volcano. The volcano is about to explode. You've lived on that island your whole life, and you've always known there's another island over there that you could get to, right? But you've never ever wanted to swim over there because it's too far. But now the volcano is exploding. What do you think is going to happen? Well, you're going to, no longer be alive anyway. You might as well give it a shot and try to swim to that other island. And that's the basics of my answer to that we were talking about earlier, actionable freedom. That doesn't mean you'll make it, but here's a good thing. There's not only one of us, there's billions of us. Someone's going to make it. And here's some other things about the future that I find kind of bright. With the internet, internet's new. Everyone is assuming that the internet is going to be forever. Everyone's assuming that we're going to be able to maintain this pace of data exchange everywhere. How many people already know these AI data centers? It's like one AI search or whatever is like 1 gallon of water or whatever that's used to process all the information, or however it is. I don't know. Not only that, there are base metals that are used on all these computers. People don't know this, but metals can only be recycled about 7 cycles. So the copper that you use in all of your wiring of your house can only be recycled so many times. The silver in your phones or nickel, whatever is in those C4 circuit boards, one, we only have a year supply above ground right now for all of the silver that's in existence. And two, yet again, it only has a limited recycle amount, and the cost to recycle it is still not very economically feasible. So this idea that the internet is going to just become this super surveillance state, maybe it could happen for a while. Maybe we could get a little bit in of a corner, but unless we come up with some new technologies to be able to produce the materials that we need, maybe it's graphene, I don't know, or we end up mining comets on other planets, it'd be very difficult to be able to maintain this breakneck pace consuming the materials that we are. I mean, look at lithium for the batteries in the cars. Like, barely get enough of that. There's only like 4 or 5 places on the planet you can get it from. Now, outside of all that, humanity, the skill sets that we have or don't have nowadays, I think that they will one adapt. We don't need people making horseshoes anymore every day, everywhere like we needed. But there are going to be new jobs that will be created where people will have to manage these systems, and it's going to probably be a lot of things that are unpredictable. No one thought there was going to be people changing tires every day for cars instead of shoe horses. That's some of it. If you have anything that you want to critique me on that, I'm happy to hear it. But otherwise, I gave my general gist on that. We could get into the weeds if you want on it. Outside of that, we've been here for about 41 minutes. Do I have any questions from the class, or should I start wrapping this up? Oh, we have a couple people. I need to see some more. I don't think all my comments on my other phone are showing up. Okay. Well, anyway, other than that, okay, one more comment. Got it. Have you considered that the evolutionary pressure could have changed a team-based approach to one that, through the tools, allows for psychopaths to be selected for evolution? Yes, and I've actually done videos on that. I'm trying to remember the title of it. I did it a while back. I'll send you a link on it about how nowadays, since you don't live in tribes, this is like a psychopath's playground living in modern times right now. You can move from city to city to city, leech off different people, treat them badly, get things out of them. And then also, the politicians, this is a very good scenario for them as well. Here's the thing. A lot of people, a lot of places haven't developed the natural understanding of these psychopath types, because in times past, if you were to catch on to one psychopath, a sociopath, whatever, they would be dealt with immediately, and they would no longer be a part of the gene pool. They're very suppressed. Now they can kind of run free and do all this stuff. Um, what I would say is, one, a lot of people, they assume a lot of goodness in other people, right? That's why in our first video of mapping reality, we said that your intentions or your reticular activation system should not be set on good. That sounds very funny. You should watch that last video. And neither should they be set on bad intentions, but you should be set on truth. So, with that being said, how are these people going to be dealt with? Well, any system that becomes too filled with parasites, whether it's a body of an animal or a computer, is overrun to the point to where the parasites themselves kill off the host, and then the host no longer supplies them their needs, and then they are weeded out. That's the natural progression of parasites, right? That is one potential thing. But also, you can develop defenses against parasites. We humans have a really good one, and so do a lot of other creatures. It's sexual breeding. We pair with each other. We mix DNA over and over again, and we change everything constantly. I am not an exact carbon copy of my father, because viruses would then be able to infiltrate me very easy. We need a variety of humans, a variety of thought processes. We cannot have a monoculture as humans. That's one. Um, Two, as far as getting rid of parasites, I do think there is a potential for human consciousness to level up. You could say right now we're on kind of like a level 5 consciousness on the ALDQ, whatever consciousness charts, the 9 levels of consciousness. If you could get, so a lot of people in the West are here on a 6 level consciousness, and they assume a lot of good in other people. Let other people be, let love be love. The hippie movement back in the 60s was kind of the birth of all that. If we get to a level 7 collectively, that would be really good. And for if we are going to be worthy of the technologies that are going to come out. How do you get people to that level 7? Well, as an individual, going from a level 6 consciousness to a level 7 consciousness involves getting screwed over. When you get screwed over and you no longer just assume the best of everyone, that their systems just work, you then end up with people who are not as naive, right? Okay. I do fear that they condition the vast majority and slowly make us redundant before we manage to evolve. Okay. So that what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of useless leaders on UBI, and you're going to have people with no skills, nothing, right? What do humans like to do? What is kind of like our big motivators, right? Well, for men, one of the biggest is mating, right? What happens if you have a bunch of men on the UBI thing, right? What happens if you have a bunch of people who can't get the one thing they're driven by the most? Everyone's equal. Let's call it like, neo communism or whatever, the welfare state, almost like idiocracy or something. That's when people start getting creative. If you look at David Panem, R versus K theory, he used to talk about mating strategies between a rabbit and a wolf. When you have plentiful environments with there's grass everywhere that can be eaten, and you're a weaker creature, you produce like crazy, right? Especially, I mean, and then the other is if you're a wolf, maybe there's not as much food, right, or whatever. You're in a scarce environment, and but you want to raise offspring, you raise higher quality offspring, right? This UBI thing, the welfare thing, you can already look at it. Section 8, the projects, what happens? A lot of babies with no parents, right? That's one thing. Um, and you end up with people who kind of look at mouse utopia study, right? You have it's not really mouse utopia, it's mouse dystopia is really what the study came out to. But it ends in lots of violence. It ends in a lot of chaos and a lot of people fighting over not so much resources, but status and mating access, but it can't be maintained because the population gets so big, it just dissolves into chaos, right? So, with that all being said, I don't think that we would run out of people. I don't think we would be made redundant to running out of humans. I think that it would almost have the opposite effect of what they think is going to happen. They're going to end up having a population boom, but it's going to be more barbaric, right? Pair that with the AI stuff, right? And here's the thing: you need human overseers for this AI stuff. Maybe you get to AGI where it can run its whole self, but if it gets to that point, it's just going to hyper expand. Who even knows if it'll stay on this planet or it'll just systemize the entire universe within a matter of years, and then the whole thing is just AI universe because it'll hyper expand. Or, but I mean, if that was the thing, then another AI would have done it in some other far off planet and galaxy and expanded out to the far reaches where we are already now, probably, or have already, But it comes down to energy. It comes down to resources. Um, this AI stuff, you need a lot of electricity. You need a lot of, coal. You need a lot of metals. You need all this stuff. And there's a lot of nuance to producing all that. I don't know how it'll work out like that. Humanity's, I think, biggest opportunity moving forward, I do think there will be humans that will have a large amount of conscious expansion. I do think that there will be a large group of people who are going to become that jaded group. There's been a couple events in recent past that have shown people a lot of really what goes on behind the scenes. And I wouldn't worry about the AI so much being physically confrontational as much as economically confrontational. And when you have humans who are aware of what's going on and all this stuff, I think there will be pushback. And I think that, you know, it's never when you have a revolution of some type. I'm not encouraging anything like that. I'm just talking about in times past as a case study. Um, it was the few who went against the large. It doesn't take a lot of people to start a fire or whatever. No, I mean, we will become so redundant to them that when we reach mouse city levels, they will just shut down the major majority of us. Let's hope there is enough of us to counterbalance them and influence and resource. Good chat. Keep up the good work. Yeah, look, AI runs off systems too. We as humans in our modern culture, yes, we run off the electric grid, sewer and plumbing systems, cars, interstates, banking systems, all these things. So does AI. Like the breakaway point, right, for AI to start completely running on its own is going to rely on us for a very long time to keep the infrastructure stuff running. I run a construction company. I know the ins and outs of maintaining infrastructure, buildings, land, all these things. I also have a pretty good understanding of robotics and how it works. I've dealt with robots. I've dealt with technologies. I was in the military. I've worked on and I used tens of $1 million pieces of equipment and many fields of electronics and stuff like that. These robots and AI stuff are not going to be able to start self maintaining without us. They need us. And if the system collapses, right, then the AI in itself will also collapse. It needs us. It can't just, I mean, you can maybe, but it's going to be really drawn out for a very long time. And it would be difficult for it to break away like that. We're tied at the hip. AI and us, it's just like the other animals on the planet. Like we all need each other. If the bees die and they don't pollinate our flowers anymore, I mean, we're done because there won't be any more plants. The trees will all die. It's an ecosystem, and this is a new, you could almost say, a new species being introduced. And yes, that usually goes pretty crazy whenever you have one group of humans that move to a new continent and get introduced to a new group of humans. Usually, there's diseases interchange or whatever. Probably going to be a lot of mind viruses interchanged between us and AI, and a lot of maybe conflicts in some sense, in some sorts. But then there's also the other things. All right. Um, I meant psychopaths more than AI. Whoever ends up controlling it will control human evolution. I fear they are winning. I do agree with you in general, though. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, psychopaths have been around for since the beginning of time. They have an evolutionary function. Psychopaths, they're kind of like a disruptor in the system. Psychopaths are like 1-2% of the population, or something like that on high end. Um, they're a parasite strategy. They're there to maximum benefit for themselves, short lived, get in as many offspring as they can. They don't exchange value, they take value, right? Though they can only do that so much as there is a system to leech off of. So, what I was getting at earlier is that, look, if they mess it up so bad that they ruin the very inherent systems that runs everything, they won't be able to leech off of us anymore. They'll have destroyed the system in itself. And look, strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. Everything's in cycles. And that's another thing we need to talk about this whole universe mapping is cycles, which is a good transition to saying next week in this mapping of the universe, we will talk about cycles. Make fun of me if I don't know how to spell. I need to get better at it. You'll tease me into doing better. Okay. Well, guys, I think that is it for today. And I need to get some other stuff done. But thank you very much for joining. Very happy to see you here. Actionable Freedom. You have very good commentary. Your mind is sharp. I have thought all these thoughts that you have thought. I'm not saying that to reduce anything you're saying. Believe me, I have thought about these things a long time. I've been in through it all, and I get where you're coming from. I really do. I used to hold your position a lot more. I did, but it's all good, man. Hey, like I said, we're here forever. Universe is here forever. I don't think it's so serious. Okay, have a good one, guys. Take care and enjoy your day.